My 4th grade teacher called me the devil, so I proved her right. When I was in 4th grade, my math teacher adored my bully. No matter what he did, she made me help him and always took his side. If I stood up for myself or others, she treated me horribly. She was super religious and for some reason called me the devil whenever I upset her or her favorite student. I wasn't anti-religion, I'm Jewish, but her behavior was ridiculous. One day in gym class, my bully went too far. He shoved me to the floor over and over. I finally snapped and swung my arm cast at him. I wasn't trying to break his bones, but I definitely wanted him to feel it. The gym teacher stopped me before I could do any damage, but later my math teacher made me pay. She called me the devil again and treated me worse than ever. So I decided to prove her right. For weeks, I gathered emails from psychics, tarot readers, and mediums. Everything I knew she would hate. Once things calmed down, I signed her up for all of them using her school email. A few days later, I saw her checking her computer and turning bright red. She looked furious, but had no idea who did it. Shortly after, we heard that new email rules were put in place for teachers to stop unwanted spam. Every time she looked stressed, I smiled sweetly at her. And to make things even better, I messed with my bully's math homework. I gave him wrong answers and his grades dropped fast. She couldn't prove I did anything, but I watched her stress levels rise while I enjoyed every second.
The completely legal way to mess with someone's food. I work in a cafeteria at a factory, so most of my customers are regulars, and over time, I get to know what they like and dislike. There's one woman who works nights, and she absolutely loathes peas. She won't even try to pick them out of her food. It's not just a mild dislike, she won't touch them under any circumstances. On the flip side, she loves any kind of chicken soup, but if there are peas in it, you can bet she'll be upset. Last week, we had a chicken soup with no peas, just the way she likes it, but she still managed to get mad. Why? Because we serve the noodles on the side. It's our standard practice, so the noodles don't get soggy and mushy from sitting in the soup. But for some reason, that sent her into a bit of a tailspin. Today, we're making chicken and wild rice soup, and I know she's a huge fan of it. I made sure to cook extra, so we'd have enough for the midnight shift. But here's the catch. I didn't have time to chop up fresh carrots like the guy on the day shift does. I was in a rush, so I grabbed the frozen peas and carrots mix from the freezer. It was quick and easy, perfect for the situation. Of course, I knew she would notice the peas immediately, but honestly, I couldn't cater to her when I had to serve 100 other people. In a cafeteria, you have to move fast. No one can be the center of attention. So, I went ahead and stirred the frozen mix into the soup. As I watched her walk by the soup station, I saw her eyes flicker when she saw the peas. I knew what was coming. She grabbed her bowl, took a deep breath, and shot me a look of pure disapproval. But instead of starting an argument, she just sighed and walked away. I couldn't help but smile to myself. You Tesla drivers are hogging the chargers in my building? Okay, no more free charging for you. I live in a great mixed-use building with nice amenities, including free electric car charging. For 2 years, everything was fine, with a few EVs using the 4 chargers. But then more Tesla drivers started moving in, and it became a problem. These drivers often ignored the building's 4-hour charging limit, taking up chargers for the entire day and night, which made it hard for others to charge their cars. The chargers got worse when one stopped working, leaving only one charger for over 20 cars. I left a note on the charger about the 4-hour limit, but it was ripped up with a rude response saying, "Say it to my face." It turned into a race to get to the chargers before the Teslas took them for hours, and sometimes they won. Someone else left a note asking Tesla drivers to be more considerate, but the reply was, "I saw you on my cameras, LMAO, I won't consider shit." So, I decided to take action. I sent the photos of the notes to both the property manager and the regional manager, letting them know about the charger problems and the selfish behavior. I also pointed out that the chargers had never been charging tenants any money. This got their attention, and I found out they're now replacing the chargers with new ones that will start charging tenants after 4 hours. This will add up for the Tesla drivers who hog the chargers all day and night. Since my car doesn't take long to charge, this won't affect me, but it will hopefully make those Tesla drivers think twice.
I refused to give my parents the first grandchild after they disowned me. When I was 19, I got pregnant by my boyfriend. My conservative parents completely lost it. They called me irresponsible, said I was ruining my future, and gave me an ultimatum. Either give the baby up for adoption or be cut off completely. I chose to keep my baby, and they followed through. They cut me off financially and emotionally, and I didn't hear from them for years. It was incredibly tough, but I finished college, built my career, and raised my son on my own without any help from them. They never reached out, even though I kept them updated on where I was living. Fast forward to now, my younger sister had her first baby. Suddenly, my parents are obsessed with being grandparents. They threw a huge baby shower for her, post constantly about being first-time grandparents, and are acting like my son doesn't even exist. It hurt, but I let it go, not wanting to stir the pot. Then, a few weeks ago, they reached out to me after all this time. They said they want to reconnect because my son is technically their first grandchild, and they feel guilty for missing out on his life. They even had the audacity to say that my son deserves to know his real family. I couldn't believe it. I told them no. They made their choice 7 years ago, and I'm not going to let them waltz back into our lives just because they suddenly want to be grandparents. They got upset, calling me cruel and selfish for punishing them for past mistakes. My sister is telling me I should consider it for my son's sake, but I don't think I owe them anything. Turn off my internet? Alright, no more gaming for you. My ex hasn't taken our breakup well since I ended it in December. He kept trying to guilt me into getting back together, ignored my boundaries, and openly said he didn't need to be nice to me anymore. I've been trying to ignore him and block him on social media, not engaging when he reached out. We had shared a rental house, and when he moved out, I started the process of changing the services in his name to mine. One of these services was the internet. Since I was a secondary account holder, I needed his permission to make changes. I asked him to fill out a simple form to transfer the account, but instead, he canceled the account without telling me. This left me without internet. For forcing me to create a new account and restart the service. The router didn't work well with the new setup, leaving me without internet for a week. It was a huge hassle that could have been avoided if he just filled out the form. I didn't plan on doing anything more, but a few weeks later, I saw an opportunity. I opened my Steam account to play a game and saw a notification that my ex was playing a game on my account. He had used my account before to avoid buying games, and since he never made his own account, he was still using mine. So I changed my password and kicked him off while he was in the middle of a game. About 10 minutes later, he messaged me asking for my Steam password. I ignored him. The best part? He was out at sea for work with limited internet, so even if he created his own account, he wouldn't be able to download the games.
What's the stupidest reason someone tried to fire you? My company gives a $500 work-from-home stipend for office essentials. I got mine approved, bought a desk and chair, submitted the receipts, and was reimbursed. Everything seemed fine until last week. Out of nowhere, my boss called me into a meeting with HR. He said, "We've reviewed your expenses and you misused company funds." I was confused. He then said, "You bought a gaming chair. That's a personal expense? That's theft." I thought he was joking at first. The chair was just a normal ergonomic chair. Nothing like the flashy gaming chairs I've seen. I reminded him that it was approved, and he said he didn't realize it was a gaming chair at the time. HR spoke up saying, "I approved this too. Our policy doesn't specify chair types." My boss immediately started backpedaling, but HR wasn't having it. She then turned to me and asked if I had noticed any other issues with my boss's handling of company expenses. That's when it all clicked. My boss had been expensing all kinds of things, like a luxury pen, a standing desk converter still in its box under his desk, and even a high-end massage gun. I mentioned these items and HR started taking notes. My boss turned white, clearly rattled. A few days later, he was gone. There was no formal announcement or goodbye email, just a vague, "We wish him the best" message from upper management. I didn't know exactly what had happened, but I didn't care. I was just relieved. Now I sit in my very comfortable, fully approved ergonomic chair with no boss to bother me about it. Employees are not allowed to leave the break room on their break? Okay, whatever. A few years ago, I worked at McDonald's near a few schools, so most of my coworkers were high school kids. During summer, we started having a problem. Employees would take their breaks, eat, and then hang out in the kitchen, which slowed things down. To fix it, our manager made a rule. If you're on break, you have to stay in the break room. It worked fine, until school started again. Now we were short-staffed during busy times, and the rule was causing problems. Management decided to lift it so people could clock in early if needed. But the district manager didn't like that, and brought the rule back. He said anyone who worked during their break would be written up or fired. Now, on April 20th, we were super busy. We called in extra help, including the regional and district managers. Everything was going smoothly, until my break started. I sat down to eat, but then a customer ordered 47 double quarter pounders, followed by another customer ordering 75 20-piece nugget meals. The kitchen was struggling to keep up. The district manager came in and told me, "Clock in and help." I smiled and said, "Sorry, but if I do that, I'll get fired because of your rule." I kept eating. The regional manager threatened to fire me. One coworker on break decided to clock in early and got written up for it later. I stayed put. In the end, the store lost $1,500 in refunds and $5,000 in wasted food. The regional and district managers were moved to a different region. The rule was changed and I got free food for life at that McDonald's. Steal a parking spot from a disabled person? Okay, pay up, Karen. Last week, I went to Costco with my son, who has a medical condition that allows him to park in disabled spots. I found one, but noticed a van with a disability placard. I decided to give them the spot. As I backed out, a woman in a Cadillac with no placard zoomed into the spot between me and the van. The van driver and I were furious. I got out to confront her, while my son stayed in the car. The woman had Canadian plates, which I found strange because Canadians are usually friendly, but she was rude. She stormed off into the store, and I called my son, the police chief, to report what happened. To my surprise, the police arrived in less than 5 minutes. The officer approached the woman and said, "Ma'am, you can't park in a disabled spot without a placard." She replied, "I just pulled in after they were fighting for the spot." The officer shook his head. "I was giving her the spot because she needed it more." I motioned to my grandson, who has cerebral palsy and uses a wheelchair. She scoffed, "You don't even look disabled." The officer then asked, "Your car is from Ontario. How long have you been in the US?" "About a year," she said, sounding nervous. The officer replied, "You need to register your car. That's a $500 fine plus $250 for parking illegally in a disabled spot." She was stunned as the officer handed her the ticket. She grabbed it, fuming, and stormed off. Before I left, I found out the van lady hadn't called 911. She called her son, the police chief. Karen left with a $750 fine.
Am I the asshole for slamming a child in the stomach with a metal pipe at the grocery store? Hear me out. I was buying my groceries as usual, and as I am checking out this beautiful can of tomato sauce, I stumbled upon a child maybe 5 to 6 years old. He looked up at me and asked his mom, "Mom, I want that can of tomato sauce." So I start to argue with this kid and his mom. He doesn't have the right to call dibs on anything he wants in the grocery store. If I found it first, it's mine. I don't care what this kid's mom has to say. This kid can't just steal my rightfully owned can of tomato sauce like that. All the anger I have been holding for the past few weeks, ever since my wife left me, ever since my mother kicked me out of her house, was all let out, and I pull out my trusty metal pipe that I've been keeping in my backpack just in case. Pick up the child, throw it in the air, and slam it with my metal pipe as hard as I can. The kid goes flying into the toothpaste aisle of the grocery store, crying. His mother starts screaming at me and threatens to call the police. I don't care. I would rather keep my can of tomato sauce. It is rightfully mine. I have all the right in the world to slam him with a metal pipe.
My husband didn't believe his mom lied, so I put her on speaker. My husband got into a car accident last week and broke his leg. He had to stay in the hospital, and it was just me and his mom taking turns visiting. Now me and his mom, we don't get along at all, but every time I try to tell him how she treats me, he brushes it off and tells me I'm being paranoid. Anyway, he was complaining about the hospital food, said it tasted like nothing, and asked if I could bring him his favorite meal, a steak dish. Thing is, steak's expensive where we live, and I barely had time to breathe, let alone cook. I told him I'd see what I could do. That's when his mom chimes in, with that smug tone saying if I'm truly a supportive wife, I'd find a way to make it happen. Later, when we stepped out of the room, her whole vibe changed. Suddenly, she was all soft-spoken and sweet, telling me I looked exhausted and should go home to rest, and that she would make the steak for him. I even asked, "Are you sure?" And she goes, "Absolutely." Next day, I show up at the hospital, and my husband immediately asks why I didn't bring the steak. I tell him his mom offered to do it and told me not to worry. He blinks and says, "Mom said that? I'm not buying it." Then he turns to her, she's sitting right there, and asks, "Mom, did you say that?" And this woman has the audacity to act confused. She goes, "What? No, of course not. I'm not his wife. Why would I take over your responsibilities?" My jaw dropped. My husband just stared at me like I was the crazy one. I waited until she left the room, then I pulled out my phone, called her, and put her on speaker. I said, "Didn't you tell me you'd make the steak and I shouldn't worry about it?" She goes, "I did, but I obviously wasn't actually going to do it. I just wanted my son to see how his wife handles tough times, and you took the bait." My husband's face just blank. Then he got pissed. Called her later and told her she's not allowed to visit him anymore. She went nuclear, called me manipulative, posted a rant on Facebook saying I'm jealous, lazy, and keeping her from her son because I couldn't be bothered to cook. Now his whole family is coming after me. My bridesmaid showed up in a black dress, so I kicked her out. So I had a winter wedding. Snow, forest green, and gold theme. Everything planned down to the detail. All the bridesmaids were supposed to wear forest green, gold accessories. My maid of honor wore black because I wanted her to stand out. That was the only exception. One of my bridesmaids, let's call her Kat, hated the green from the beginning, said it was ugly, unflattering, too masculine, and kept pushing for me to switch it to pink, red, even blue. I told her no, nicely. I explained the theme and that I already had everything coordinated. She kept complaining, but whatever. I moved on. I even paid for all the bridesmaid dresses, so it's not like she had to spend anything. Then the wedding day comes. We're all getting ready, hair and makeup done, and Kat shows up late holding a bag. I ask what's in it. She says it's a second dress she might change into later if she gets uncomfortable. Fine. Fast forward, we're about to take pre-ceremony photos. Everyone comes downstairs in their dresses, and Kat shows up in a black dress, the same color I specifically said only my maid of honor could wear. So I go up to her and calmly ask her to change. She straight up tells me she looks disgusting in green. She's not wearing it and starts walking away. I tell her one more time, change or I'm getting security. She tells me to fuck off at my own wedding. So yeah, I had security escort her out right then and there. She caused a whole scene, yelling that I'm a bitch, a control freak, an awful friend. I didn't care. I wasn't letting anyone ruin my wedding over some dumb color drama. Later, she blew up my phone demanding I pay her back for the black dress that she wasn't even supposed to wear. I blocked her. Some bridesmaids said I was too harsh, but I don't regret it. I told everyone the rules. She thought she was above them, so I kicked her out. My golden child, little sister, tried to unalive me because I took away her spotlight at my wedding. So I put her in jail for a 12-year sentence. My little sister Ava has always been what someone would call a attention seeker. She needs attention on her at all times. And my parents didn't exactly help with humbling her. Every event had to be about her, or she'd absolutely freak out. At every single one of my birthday parties, she'd blow out the candles and have her own presents. And God forbid she had to watch someone else get something she didn't have. I felt like I was invisible growing up because my parents hardly cared about my achievements or my events, as they were always focused on the attention Ava deserved. Ava was extremely premature and even died 5 times as a preemie. So my parents treat her like a little angel because they almost lost her. So whenever Ava acted up, they turned a blind eye. Ava even had a nasty habit of trying to take the attention of anyone who tried to even look in my direction. Every single boy I've dated suddenly ghosted me and started showing up at our house asking for Ava. I was sick of it. So when I was 18, I distanced myself and went to a college out of state. I found the love of my life, Kyle, there. Now 6 years later, we're getting married. His family became mine, and I finally felt accepted somewhere. So when it was time to compile the guest list, I decided that it was time to see my family again, so that they'd see what they were missing out on. Kyle even insisted I invite Ava because he wanted to be the one to finally put her in his place. It was the perfect day. I walked down the aisle, saw Ava huffing in the 3rd row with my parents trying to calm her down, and met Kyle at the end. We both were in tears by the end of the ceremony, and when it was time for reception, I thought everything went exactly to plan. That's when Ava struck. She came up to me, and in the most sincere tone ever, she congratulated me. My jaw literally dropped. That's when she offered me a glass of whiskey and made a toast to her beautiful sister and her handsome groom. I was a little sussed out because she had never been this nice to me before, and that's when I went to drink the glass. It smelled a little weird, but I always get a little sick from alcohol, so I drank up. I started to feel a little woozy and felt my throat closing up. It should be known that I have a severe allergy to lemons. I looked at Ava and she held up a lemon in her hand. I started panicking and holding onto my throat, and Ava just walked away to Kyle. She even twirled her hair at Kyle while I was literally dying. Kyle looked my way as soon as she came to him and ran to me with an EpiPen. I had to go to the hospital because my throat was extremely damaged and had to miss my honeymoon. So when the cops came to my room asking me what happened, I told them exactly what happened. Ava poisoned me. You should have seen the way my phone blew up after Ava got arrested. My parents were calling me a monster for turning on my own blood. Ava even decided to get one of my exes to be her lawyer, and all he could say during court was that I was a jealous liar. The trial was obviously pretty short. Guess who's going to jail for 12 years? Ava! What made your marriage end? He came home from work, ate dinner, and said, I want you to do something and I don't want you to fight me on this. I want a divorce. I was completely blindsided. Then he packed a bag and left for his mother's house. I made him leave his key. He didn't understand that. How will I get in the house? I replied that he had no reason to enter the house when I wasn't home. He didn't live there anymore. He was shocked. I started thinking about his integrity and the microaggressions that had recently increased for Christmas. He had given me a bottle of men's cologne. That's it. Of course, he kept it for himself. It was evident that he had given my gift absolutely no thought. So instead of begging him to stay, I emptied out the joint accounts and made an appointment with a family attorney for the next day. Of course, he wanted to drag things out. He came to get his things the same week, and I watched TV while he packed and loaded the car. He actually asked me to help. I said, this is something you want to do, not me. Before he left, I told him that I know he is still committing adultery, and that my attorney attorney said he should be careful about that. Lots of denying and sputtering, but the thing that bothered him most was not getting a lawyer. He actually said, "You got a lawyer. You know, I will always take care of you. Don't you trust me?" By the way, he told me the reason he needed space was the children are grown now, so I don't have to pretend anymore. I never wanted a family that I had to hang out with, so that was the end. A year later, a judge granted me about a third of his assets and income as alimony until I remarry or die. We were married 32 years and I was 65 years old. And I'm sitting pretty comfortably and very peacefully in a different city, except for incidental paperwork handled by my attorney. I have no contact. I don't have to pretend anymore either. I offered to let my mom live with me under the exact same terms. I lived with her as a teen. I don't know why. In God's good name, my mom thought I would be the one to come to. We don't get along. I went to live with Dad at 16 because she told me she hated me and asked me to leave. My older brother, the favored sibling, I know for a fact has a spare bedroom she could sleep in now that she's losing the house. My mom's situation is entirely her own fault as well, which makes this all the more annoying. She and my stepdad bought a 7-bedroom house 10 years ago, right after she left her job of 20 years to work at some dumb startup that was out of business only 3 years later. My stepdad spent the last years of his challenging life bedbound because he ignored it. Every doctor telling him to stop shoving his face full of food at every waking moment of the day. So he passed away 500 pounds and in misery. I was more than fine with this, by the way. Well, when he passed away early this year, pretty much during the last of the money, my joke of a mother had remained. And now the bank's taking the house back. So she shows up at my door for some reason after mistreating me since I was a kid, and ignoring me unless she wanted something since she married that thankfully deceased overweight person. She had the audacity to ask to live with me. It's only me and my husband in our 2-bedroom house. Sure, but their bedroom is his office. The basement is my art studio, and the couch in front of the fireplace is for our lovely cats. There is no room for the difficult mother anywhere in this house, but I knew this opportunity would never come again. So I told her she could live with us if and only if she decided to follow the house rules. All electronics were to be turned off by 6 p.m. If she was caught with any after that, they would be taken away and sold at the next yard. Sale to that time was $730. If I caught her up, I would take away all of her clothing for the week. 3, she may only shower for 5 minutes once every 3 days. 4, ultras must be dead the moment she wakes up. If I roll out of bed and they are not, she will not be getting meals for the day. 5, she must make sure she is alert at all times. If I and hubby need something done, it is to be done at that moment or else she will lose her bedding privileges for the night. 6, she will be in charge of cooking 1 meal each day that I choose. If it is not made to my liking, she will not be allowed to join us, and instead will eat the cheapest frozen meal available. 7, I will be reading all her mail, text messages, and emails. I will give her the ones I deem acceptable communication under my roof. 8 of her cars will be my own personal travel car. She will also drive me wherever I want. She will still have to pay for gas. And last but not least, if at any point she displeases me, I will be calling my brother up to pick her up from a nearby gas station. I will get to choose what she takes to put in a torn-up backpack before dropping her off without looking back. She called me a cruel person, told me these conditions were unfair, and asked if I was insane. These were the exact conditions I lived under for years as a teenager. The exact conditions she tormented me with for years until she finally let me go live with the one parent that loved me. And these would be the conditions she would suffer under if she dared to ask me to harm her worthless negative presence. I don't know where she went after she stormed out of my house. My brother called me and told me I have the biggest balls in the family for the stunt I pulled. From the sounds of it though, none of the spawn want the brood mother to live with them. I hope she finds a nice park bench to stay on. What did your school illegally do? Basically, they changed the lunchtime. The lunchtime in my area was allowed to be 30 to 45 minutes. That's the law, no more or less than that amount of time. Of course, we already had the short time with being 30 minutes. We got a new principal the next year. All of the high-energized 7th grade ran down the hall to see their friends and eat the gross chicken they served. We called it the Amazing Chicken Thursdays. Why? I have no idea. Everyone hated the chicken, but we still ate. I think it was even a challenge to see who could keep it in their mouth the longest. Anyways, we all sat down at our tables with our friends. Since it was the first day of school, we weren't allowed to get our lunch yet because we had to listen to some rules. Usually on the first day of school, lunch is extended to about 15 minutes longer so we can discuss things about school. Well, 10 minutes later, the principal finally says he's done talking and we may proceed to get lunch. I grabbed my lunch and sat down at a seat. Then I hear a bell ring. I thought it was for a different grade. I mean, everyone just got their lunch. Surely it wasn't us. Wrong. The principal announced over his tiny mic, "Have a good day, students." Me and 80 to 100 other kids looked around shocked and confused. We didn't even have a chance to put a crumb of amazing chicken into our mouths. I threw away my tray and left. I checked the time. Maybe we were all delusional. Maybe things were slowed down a bit in line because it was the first day. There had to be a reason as to why no one had any time to eat their lunch. Okay, checking the time and what? Lunch started at 11:25 and it was about 11:42. Lunch had ended about 2 minutes ago. Lunch was 15 minutes long? I asked my teacher. She nervously said that lunch was now 15 minutes long. The principal never notified students nor parents. Why? Later I asked the principal. He confirmed that lunch was now 15 minutes long. I asked him why. He said people need to learn to eat faster and learn time management. I furiously called my mom in front of him and told her. He for some reason has a concerned look on his face, and at that time I didn't understand why. My mom, after doing tons of research, later found out it was illegal. She made a few calls, and within 2 weeks our lunch was 40 minutes. Sweet, and extra 10 minutes.
What made you go on your villain arc? My son ended his own life because some girl had falsely accused him, and the entire city was sending him threats. She never had any proof, but because she was the daughter of a congressman, she didn't face any repercussions. I saw her on the day of the funeral, smiling and laughing with her friends like it was some type of joke. I knew that people like these will never face justice thanks to our wonderful legal system, so I decided to find justice on my own. As a former police police officer, I had some connections with the worst type of people. I called one of them on the phone and said, "Do you remember when I let your little brother off the hook? It's time to pay back that debt." He had seen the news, so he already knew what I wanted, and wasted no time in saying yes. But that girl wouldn't regret her actions even if someone kidnapped her, so I took a different approach. Within 3 months, every single dirty deal that congressman made was out in the public. The authorities didn't just take him into custody, they took all his property and assets as well. His wife and daughter were on the streets, and went online to ask for sympathy. This is when I made my final move. Rumors about that girl falsely accusing and ruining the lives of several boys were spread everywhere. People hated her so much that they would drive by while throwing rocks at her head. And then one day, as she was crying on the sidewalk with her mother, I ran her over. What's your greatest regret? Googling my father one day when I was in my 40s. I always knew he was a horrible person. He hurt me and my mother every way you can think of. When I was a teenager, he was arrested after DNA evidence tied him to a string of young boys who were violated. It wasn't really a shock. The bright side was that he was sent to prison for 10 years. In that time, I moved both me and my mother to another state to make sure he was out of our lives. But one day, years later, I was curious and looked him up. I knew that he'd changed his name after he got out of prison because he'd written to me a few times trying to reconcile. I found an article that mentioned his new name, and my heart sunk. He'd married again and had a son, who was a teenage champion basketball player. There was a picture of them together, celebrating him winning some scholarship. Seeing his hand on his son's shoulder made me sick. I found my half-brother on Facebook and contacted him telling him who I was, and asked if he knew what kind of man our father was. He didn't seem to have any idea what I meant. I sent him the court documents and explained to him what he'd done to me and my mother. I just wanted him to know the truth so he could protect himself and his family. But 2 days later I got a call from an unknown number. It was my father sobbing. He told me that his son had unalived himself. Apparently he'd had a lot of mental health struggles, and finding out his father was a monster was the last straw. My father asked me if I was happy now that I'd ended the life of an innocent child. I don't know if it was my fault, but I wish I'd never looked him up. Ex-alcoholics, what made you stop drinking? When I was 16, my whole family died in a car accident. I was the only one who made it. One second, we were driving home from my sister's soccer game, laughing at something dumb. The next, I woke up in a hospital bed with a doctor standing over me, looking like he didn't want to be the one to say it. After that, I shut down. I had no close family, so they put me in foster care. The people who took me in barely acknowledged me. They made me sleep in the shed when I pissed them off. Some nights, I went to bed hungry. I started sneaking out, getting strangers to buy me whatever cheap liquor I could get my hands on. By 18, I was homeless. My routine was simple. Wake up, go to work, buy booze, pass out, repeat. I had no reason to stop. I didn't care if I woke up the next morning or not. Then one night, I was drinking outside a gas station when a cop pulled up. I kept my head down, waiting for him to tell me to move or arrest me. Instead, he leaned against his car and said, "You even old enough for that?" I shrugged. Yeah, basically. He looked at me for a second, then nodded toward his car. Get in. I figured what the hell. Maybe a night in a cell would be better than this. But he didn't take me to the station. He went inside the gas station and returned with a coffee and a bag of food. He handed them to me and said, "Eat." I stared at the bag. It had been a while since someone told me to eat like they actually cared. I didn't say much, but he got me to talk. I told him I had no one, no home, nothing. He listened, then told me to wait at the station until his shift ended. That night, he brought me to his place. "Couch is yours," he said, tossing me a blanket. "We'll figure things out in the morning." I don't know why, but I told him everything. My family, the drinking, the foster home. He just nodded, like none of it surprised him. Then he told me he lost his wife in a car accident too. Said he got it. He didn't try to fix me. He didn't lecture me. He just helped. He took me to get a new ID since mine was long gone. Helped me get a better job. Kept his fridge stocked and told me to eat whatever I wanted. If I disappeared for days on a bender, he didn't yell. He just said, "You done?" when I stumbled back through the door. One time, he found me passed out in my car and didn't say a word. Just opened the door, pulled me up, and walked me inside. He sat me down at the kitchen table and put a plate of food in front of me. I could barely keep my eyes open, but I remember him saying, "You keep doing this. You're gonna end up like the guys I scrape off the sidewalk at 3 a.m. I laughed. Maybe that's the plan. He didn't laugh, just shook his head and said, "Nah, not you." I didn't believe him, but something about the way he said it stuck with me. One day, he came home and said, "Listen, I can get you into a program, law enforcement. You just gotta sober up first." I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe I could do it, but I couldn't. I told him no. Then one night, he didn't come home. The next morning, I saw the headline. A cop was shot in the line of duty. My stomach dropped. I ran to the hospital and pushed past the nurses until I found his room. He was unconscious, hooked up to machines. They said he'd live, but he'd need help. I told them I'd do it. For weeks, I took care of everything. Cooked, cleaned, picked up his meds, made sure he got to his appointments. I barely thought about drinking. It just didn't seem important anymore. One night, he looked at me and said, "Hey, when did you quit?" I blinked. "Quit what?" He smirked. "I haven't seen you drunk in weeks." I hadn't even noticed. He clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "That's what a real man does." After he healed, I told him I wanted to join that program. He helped me get in, and we became family. Eventually, I became a cop too. That was 7 years ago, and I haven't thought of having a sip since.
My brother called me a terrible artist, so I showed him exactly how effective my paintings can be. My brother Nathan is 20, but he still lives at home with me and our parents because he isn't going to college and he won't get a job. I'm a junior in high school and I definitely don't want to end up like him. I'm already thinking about colleges, specifically art school. I've loved creating art since I was a kid, and in the past few years I've really honed in on painting, and it's how I spend most of my free time. My art teacher and my guidance counselor both think I have a great chance of getting into a top art school. I've been working really hard on my portfolio, so I have good pieces to send out with my application. My parents let me use the garage for my painting, which really annoys Nathan because he got a motorcycle recently, and he wants to be able to park it in the garage. But it's just a one-car garage, so there's not really room for it with all my painting stuff. He says it's unfair for me to use it when it's supposed to be for vehicles, and if he leaves his motorcycle parked out front, someone's gonna steal it or something. I don't think anyone would steal that piece of crap bike if you paid them, but whatever. Last weekend, I was painting in the garage when my grandmother called me to see if I could bring her some groceries. She had cataract surgery recently and can't drive right now. I said of course, so I stopped in the middle of my painting and went to get her groceries. When I got home a few hours later, I immediately noticed that my brother's motorcycle wasn't parked out front where it was when I left. I assumed he'd just gone out, but when I came inside to put away the groceries I'd grabbed for our house, I heard him playing video games in the living room. I went straight to the garage and sure enough, there was his stupid motorcycle. To make room for it, he'd shoved all of my stuff to the side, and a bunch of my paintings were on the floor sitting in rainwater, and the one that was wet when I left it was completely ruined because it had smudged all over the ground. I was furious. I needed those pieces for my portfolio, and I'd really loved the one I was working on, and I was hoping to give it to my grandmother to surprise her if I got into art school. I stormed into the living room to ask my brother what the hell was the matter with him. He wouldn't even look up from his video games. He said, "That motorcycle is worth way more than your stupid paintings are." I said, "You don't even know that." And he said, "Yes, I do. You're a terrible artist. No one's ever going to pay crap for them because you can't even tell what they are. Art's supposed to make you feel something or whatever. I don't know why everyone's pretending like you can get into art school when you suck." I wanted to keep yelling at him, but I knew I was about to cry, so I just left. I went back out to the garage to try to salvage what I could, but I was so upset and so mad that I ended up grabbing my supplies and a new canvas and going up to my room and starting a new painting. So a bit of background, when my brother was in high school, he went to a party and got drunk with a bunch of his friends. Even though our parents gave us 9 million lectures about drunk driving, telling us just to call them if we ever needed a ride, he and his friends decided that they were going to go to a different party and pick up some girls and bring them back to the first party. It was raining. His best friend was driving. He was very drunk. They got into an accident. Nathan was completely fine. His friends were mostly fine. A couple had some broken bones and stuff like that, but nothing life-threatening. But the other car that they hit had a little girl in it, and she passed away. Since my brother wasn't the one driving, he just got community service for drinking underage or something. His best friend ended up having to do time. Honestly, I think my brother should have been punished worse. It's not like he told his friend not to drive, and the little girl lost her life. He didn't even really get in trouble with our parents. They just acted like it was something that happened to him, not something he was pretty responsible for. And Nathan never acted like he was affected by it at all. So I decided, hey, why not test his little theory that I'm a horrible artist and my work isn't going to make people feel anything. I painted the rainy night on the road and his friend's car, and a little smudge on the ground that was clearly this dead little girl, but not graphic or anything. Just this little smudge and my brother standing over it looking down. It was really moody and atmospheric, but there wasn't any blood or anything, just feelings. It took me a few days to finish because I wanted to get it exactly right. Once it was done, I found a spot in our kitchen and hung it up. I said, "Hey Nathan, can you come check if this is hung straight?" He was grumbling, but he came in, and then he saw the painting and he just froze, staring at it. I said, "Hey, can you tell what this is?" I know I'm a really terrible artist, so I wasn't sure people were going to know what it was. He didn't say a word and just kept staring at it. I said, "I didn't think it would bother you because I'm not good enough to make anyone feel anything, right?" And then he just started sobbing, standing right there in our kitchen. Honestly, I was completely surprised and uncomfortable. I thought if anything he'd just yell at me for painting it. I didn't really expect it to mess with him like that. After a minute, he left the kitchen and went up to his room, still crying. I think I'm going to apologize to him because I feel kind of bad, but I'm definitely submitting this one with my portfolio because clearly it's good.
What's something you were told as a kid that turned out to be a horrible lie? I was always told that my older brother ran away with his friends, but it never really made sense because I still saw his friends around town. I remember the first time I heard about him running away. It was around 1987, and I was about 8 years old. My father told me over dinner that my brother had left home while I was away at school that day, and told me not to look for him. I felt really sad, because I really loved watching television with him, and riding our bikes together, and for him to leave without saying goodbye, it really hurt my heart. While I rolled around the peas with my fork, I asked my dad when my brother would be coming back. My dad's expression turned grim, as he told me that my brother would most likely never return. That broke my heart even more. The following day, I saw my dad cutting down my brother's favorite tree in the backyard. I tried to run out and stop him, but my dad told me that he needed to remove the tree so that he could send it to my brother. That was another thing that never made sense to me, but I accepted it as a kid. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into years. It had been 10 years since my older brother ran away. I was ready to finally accept the fact that I would never see him again, until I saw his best friend enter the grocery store I worked at and saw my chance at closure. I approached him casually and asked if my brother lived with him or contacted him. The friend gave a weirded out look and explained that none of my friends had seen him for over a decade. I asked if they knew where my brother had run off to, and they said that he never ran off anywhere. I tried to push for more information, but my father walked into the store looking for me. I apologized to the friend and walked off to help my dad out. Later that night, I looked around my brother's old room for more information, and unfortunately found nothing. After giving up, I returned to my room and looked through our old drawing book we worked on together, reminding myself of why I loved my brother so much growing up. To my surprise, 2 of the pages in the book had tiny folded notes addressed to me, saying terrible things about my dad. Each note explained gruesome details about how my dad hit my brother, or punished him through starvation, or tied him up outside to a tree. I covered my mouth from shock and frantically searched around my room for more clues from our old toys. The last note I found asked me to call the police because he thought that my dad was going to do something unspeakable to him soon. My heart raced just thinking about what had actually happened to my brother. I brought all of the notes I found to class the following day and stopped by the police station in my free time. I begged them to reopen my brother's case and submitted all the evidence as well as my personal testimony. I asked them to bring in my brother's old friends, who were also aware of the things that had been going on between my brother, and my father. With enough statements, the police escorted me home and arrested my father the moment he got home. At the station, it was revealed that my dad had really beaten my brother and hid him in the tree the week he went missing. My father made sure to remove all notes from my brother's room, but never bothered checking mine. Hearing his confession at the station made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe I was living with a man who could hurt a family member in the most horrific ways imaginable. I moved out of the house that same day and moved into my mom's house. This year, my dad has a chance for parole, but I plan on fighting it for both me and my older brother.
I took my little brother, who has an eating disorder, out to a bar today. My brother, an 18 male, has struggled with an eating disorder called laughing all his life. To those unfamiliar with the condition, it is not based on his appearance or the desire to lose weight. It is based on food, color, texture, flavor, etc. Most of the time he survives on his very few safe foods: pasta, bread, some varieties of cheese, some types of cookies, tomatoes, and some other stuff. It is very restrictive. My mom has always tried to make him try other things, but he gags as soon as he puts the food in his mouth, or even before that. I, a 23-year-old female, have struggled with another eating disorder, so I never pressure him into anything, and I feel like he feels safer around me in that aspect, because he has tried things I cook out of his own will, although they're usually bland. Things are similar to his say foods, but today was different, very different. Months ago, on his birthday, I told him I would take him to this thematic bar near where we live, where the whole thing is decorated with stuff from video games and nerdy pop culture, and the food and drinks are all styled in that same manner. The big thing about this bar, and the reason why it is so popular, is that you get to play games while eating. The thing is that I was broke as heck up until recently, so just now I was able to fulfill my promise. We made the reservation more than a week ago for today, and asked for a table for two with an Xbox. He was visibly excited about this plan, and so was I. However, we never even talked about the food. I assumed we could have some fries, soda, and cheese sticks. Man, was I in for a big surprise. Once we got to our table, we started looking at the menu. He said I could try the Chikorita burrito or the Pikachu burger. I looked at those items on the menu, and they both had ingredients that he had never tried before, and I would have thought he would be terrified of trying. I'm talking sautéed mushrooms, cilantro sauce, basil, etc. I asked him if he was sure, and he said he was, but asked me to tell the waiter not to put beans in his burrito. And for the drink, he ordered a Baby Yoda drink, which was vodka, the legal age to drink. Here is 18 with various flavors of creams and stuff. I'm not good at alcohol names, but it basically tasted of white chocolate, mint, and Baca Delicious. I let him order those things and thought, well, if he backtracks, I'll eat those and order something else for him. But I didn't have to. He nervously unwrapped the burrito and took a small bite while I pretended not to be watching. He tells me I think I had a mushroom, but I'm not sure it's good anyways. And I was just so proud. Then the drink. The first time he drank alcohol, he took a sip and said it was tasty, but it burned his throat. He drank it all throughout the 2.5 hours. We stayed there though. I beat his heart in Mortal Kombat several times. And when we were out of the bar, he said, I have read online that the games were good and the place was beautiful, but that the food was bad. I actually think everything was amazing. It felt surreal. I know it sounds like a regular Friday evening to most people, but this seriously marked a milestone for him, and I'm just so happy that he trusts me enough to eat new things with me. I'm a proud big sister, guys. When did a gut feeling save your life? While studying for a test alone, I shut my phone off so nobody could reach me. But by the time I turned it on, I had received over 100 messages. So, 12 hours ago, I shut off my phone because I was way behind in a class and needed to study so I could pass the final. Like always, I went to my school's student center since they had a really good study room. In true procrastinator fashion, I told myself not to go yet until I bought an energy drink. So I go to a gas station and buy an energy drink. Then on the way to the student center, I realized I left my laptop charger at my dorm. So I went back to my dorm to get my charger. But at my dorm, I realized my bed looked really good. So I figured I might as well take a nap. It was only 12 a.m., so I could nap for a couple hours and study at like 4 a.m. So I decided to take a nap for a little while, but I don't know what happened. I think it was the energy drink, because when I fell asleep, I had really bad chest pains. I wasn't feeling well at all, so I had to get up to go to the bathroom. On the way to the bathroom, I passed this guy and asked him if he had a tum because I thought I was going to throw up. I guess he was grossed out by me and told me to move out of his way. When I went to the bathroom, I didn't throw up at all, so I said forget it and went to the student center to study. After studying for a couple hours, I turned on my phone to give myself a break, and that's when everything went crazy. My phone got over 100 messages from people just asking if I was okay. I couldn't respond to all of them, but what everyone was saying made me believe in God. Something I didn't mention before was that I live in an all-girls dorm building. I was so scared of throwing up that I didn't know why there was a guy in my dorm building. I guess I subconsciously assumed he was someone's boyfriend. He was the complete opposite, actually. He had broken into the girl's dorm with a loaded Glock to threaten this girl he had a crush on to sleep with him. When she refused to, he took her life right then and there. I guess afterwards he went insane and started lighting up the other dorms, took a girl's innocence, and made his final stop at my dorm where he came face to face with my roommate. My roommate somehow broke open her window and was able to jump out safely. She broke a couple bones when she landed in some bushes, but she was so full of adrenaline that she escaped. The guy inside ended up taking his own life outside our dorm. After everyone gave me hugs and kisses thanking God I was alive, they all had the same question: how I knew to leave my dorm.
Parents, when have you embarrassed your child? My son begged me not to come to his school's parents' career day, but since I knew that all the other parents were coming, I didn't want Liam to feel left out. But then I got to my son's classroom to sign up, and I saw that all the other parents were dressed in these really high-class suits. I became a little embarrassed of myself and of my profession, but I still had my best outfit on, because I wanted Liam to feel like his father was just as important as everyone else's. I wasn't the first parent to go up, and all the ones before me introduced themselves as accountants, therapists, and some guy was even a heart surgeon. But then, it was my time to present in front of the class, and off the bat, I could tell my son's entire class saw me as lower, especially this one kid. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to say the little effer's real name, so I'll call him Benjamin. Benjamin took one look at me and started to laugh, saying I looked like a bum and that my watch was fake. I tried shutting him down and told him my dad got me this watch from Walmart and I've had it ever since I was kid, but that only made him yell out that I look like the kind of guy who wears Walmart watches. The other kids began laughing. I remember looking across the classroom and seeing my son put his head down and between his hands in shame. That already made me feel like an embarrassment. I cleared my throat and started to talk about my job as a waste collector in New York City and how jobs like waste collectors are the backbone of society because we do the essential work no one wants to. Well, that's when Benjamin shouted out, "Waste collector? That must have been where you found Liam." Everyone burst out laughing, and I saw my son tear up. That was my final straw. Disrespecting me was one thing, but disrespecting my son was something I wasn't going to tolerate. You see, I had noticed that Benjamin's dad wasn't actually present at this show, and my son had warned me previously that Benjamin didn't have a dad, so I should refrain from commenting on it. But I didn't care. I took one look at Benjamin and said, "At least Liam has a loving father. Yours left you." And honestly, I don't blame him. You're the first ever child I'd actually blame for a divorce, you insufferable little crap. I realized I am the laughingstock of my friends. Today, I, 33 male, realized that I am nothing more than a laughingstock and butt of all jokes in my friendship circle. I found out by accident when I went to the toilet. I hosted a house party for some friends to celebrate my birthday, and whilst everyone was outside enjoying the sun, I went in to use the toilet. Preempting the toilet visit, I opened the window and was treated to hearing laughing from outside. The toilet window is on the side of the building, so not visible from the garden. After the laughter subsided, I heard someone mention my name in a comment along the lines of, "What a bit unorganized," and even more laughter. My name was mentioned several times in the following minutes where my friends took me to nothing, insulting everything about me and everything I tried to do. Everything from the drinks I make people, all are just thrown away, to the night getting better when I leave. I sat in the bathroom for about 10 minutes and just listened to the series of critical comments. A secret I confided in one friend was broadcasted to the whole group, again to much laughter. When I eventually returned back outside, everyone carried on as normal. However, I became aware that I wasn't part of the conversations, and wasn't included in anything but shared smirks and people glancing in my direction. At one point, I was making a drink in the kitchen, and one very drunk friend walked in, said, "We're all talking about how you're such a low tolerance," then burst out laughing and walked out. The more I sat there with everyone, the more clicked into place. Whenever I arrange an event, people turn up late and leave early. I'm not invited to other get-togethers and seem to be left out of all in-jokes. People didn't laugh with me, they just laughed at me, and I figured that's how it had always been, but I've been oblivious to it. No one ever asks about how I am, what I've been up to, etc. I started a new job several months ago, but no one seems to have noticed. If I don't message anyone, then no conversations are initiated. After half the people left early, again I realized it happens constantly if I organize anything. Everyone else just sat on their phones looking bored until they left. But whenever I suggested doing anything, it was met with rather not, but no alternative suggestions. To make it worse, I saw a since deleted Facebook story that everyone went out afterwards, but I wasn't invited. I just want to try but can't. I've never experienced this before and don't know what to do. I need new friends.
Single parents. What's your best dating story? I told Pete that I have a 6-year-old daughter when we were on our first date. He said he hated kids, so I knew this wasn't going to be a serious relationship. So Pete and I enjoyed just fooling around for a while on nights my daughter was at her dad's. But weeks became months and months became a year, and I realized I was really falling for him. I really hated that I was catching feelings because I knew there wasn't a future if he didn't like kids. I decided I was going to have to end things with him, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. One night we were hanging out at my place and my ex came by unexpectedly with my daughter. She'd had a nightmare at his house and wanted me. I was trying to keep my daughter from really noticing Pete. I didn't want her bonding with someone who was just going to drop out of her life, but of course she was immediately curious about the new person. And before I could really do anything, Pete crouched down and said, "Hey Molly, I'm Pete. Want to see a magic trick?" And then he did a few simple tricks for her, pulling coins out from behind her ear and stuff like that. She was delighted, and I was stunned. He was clearly so good with kids. After my ex was gone and I got Molly in bed, I asked Pete when he learned magic. He said, "A few months ago. I figured if I was going to be with a woman with a kid, I should learn a thing or two about making them laugh." I had no idea he'd been taking our relationship that seriously for that long. It's 2 years later now, and I'm pretty sure Pete and Molly like each other more than either of them likes me.
Why your overreaction is hilarious. Slide 3 was titled, "How I'm clearly the comedian in this relationship." At this point, I was too stunned to speak, but then he pulled out slide 6, "Things you can do while not cooking, because you're mad." The audacity, right? It was as if he really thought he'd win me over with this next level presentation. Spoiler alert, he did not. So, I did what any rational, PowerPoint-loving person would do. I made my own. I stayed up all night crafting a presentation called Why It's Time to Move On, a farewell guide. It had everything: flowcharts mapping his incompetence in the kitchen, pie charts illustrating my happiness before and after the great presentation debacle, and my personal favorite, slide 9, a gif of Gordon Ramsay yelling, "Get out." This morning, I sat him down and went through my PowerPoint with the same energy he had given me. His reaction was priceless. He started with that same smirk but lost it somewhere around slide 4, top 10 reasons you're moving out today. By the time I got to the resources for finding your own apartment slide, he was packing a bag. Now, before anyone worries, yes, he did actually leave. And no, I didn't even have to threaten him with slide 12, which was just a photo of me blocking the Wi-Fi router. So, yeah, we broke up, and I'm single, happy, and cooking meals for myself without any critique except my cat's judgmental stare. And to those who said I should make a breakup PowerPoint, just know your wish has been fulfilled. I still can't believe how all of this went down over the course of one single weekend, but I now feel pretty good about myself. And fun fact, some of you were right, he actually is a business consultant, so making PowerPoint presentations is quite literally his day job. I guess he took bringing work home to a whole new, Unwelcome level.
I exploded at my husband when he humiliated me about pooping during childbirth. I gave birth to my daughter just a few weeks ago, and it was honestly the most traumatic experience of my life. Being my first time, I had no idea what I was in for. The labor was brutal. I was in excruciating pain for hours. My mom was with me at first, but had to leave, so my husband stayed by my side the whole time. Then it happened. Something nobody warned me about. I pooped myself during delivery. The medical team was completely professional about it, but my husband, he couldn't stop laughing about it afterward. He didn't just laugh. He started telling my family about it. Thank God they didn't find it funny, because I sure as hell didn't. It was humiliating. I explicitly told him to stop bringing it up, but he wouldn't listen. He even started joking about getting me diapers for my oopsies. Every comment chipped away at my self-esteem. I felt so vulnerable after bringing our child into the world, and there he was, making me the butt of his jokes. Fast forward to New Year's Eve. We're celebrating with his parents and family. I got up to use the bathroom, and that's when he did it again. Oh yeah, you should go quickly because we don't want any accidents just like the one we had at the hospital. You know what I mean? He actually had the nerve to wink at me while saying it. His family laughed. His brother even said, "Good one." I stood there, completely stunned, feeling the heat rise to my face. Something in me just snapped. I lost it completely and screamed at the top of my lungs. "You cruel, insensitive jerk. You're using the most difficult experience of my life, birthing your child, as a joke to humiliate me in front of everyone." The room went dead silent. My husband just stared at me, his mouth hanging open. I stormed off to the bathroom and stayed there until we left. In the car, he exploded, saying I had embarrassed him in front of his family during a celebration. According to him, I should have sucked it up and waited until we got home to address it privately. It was just a joke, he kept saying. You should have laughed along instead of flying off the handle. You humiliated me by being petty and trying to one-up me.
Give out my phone number so you don't get calls? Cool. About 3 or 4 years ago, I started getting spam calls from realtors, or real estate scammers, who knows, looking for Roy. The calls kept coming for a week or two, then stopped. I didn't think about it again until they started back up occasionally. Every time it was about Roy selling property in a state across the country. One night, I decided to talk to them instead of hanging up. The caller gladly gave me Roy's full name and the property he was trying to sell. I looked him up and found out he had been using my phone number on real estate websites to avoid getting spammed. The calls eventually died down, and I forgot about it. A couple of months ago, the calls started again. I remembered where I had written down Roy's details and checked for an updated phone number. This time, I lucked out and found his real cell number. I thought about texting him to stop using my number, but I didn't want to deal with an old man who thought he was being clever. The very next day, I got another call from an out-of-state area code. "Oh, are you looking for Roy? Let me give you his number. Are you related to Roy?" "Nope, never met him. I live 3,000 miles away, but that guy's been using my number for 4 years. So, I found his real number. I don't know what you do for a living, but you should be an investigator. Thank you. Could you please update your system with his number instead?" "I certainly will. Thanks for being so nice about this. I haven't received a single call since."
My 4th grade teacher called me the devil, so I proved her right. When I was in 4th grade, my math teacher adored my bully. No matter what he did, she made me help him and always took his side. If I stood up for myself or others, she treated me horribly. She was super religious and for some reason called me the devil whenever I upset her or her favorite student. I wasn't anti-religion, I'm Jewish,